Alright, the next test we're going to do here is on Rust-Oleum. I purchased this Rust-Oleum enamel at Menards. I've got the three basic primary colors, yellow, red, and blue. They're a little bit thick, so I had to go out and mix them with some turpentine mineral spirits. I thinned them out a little bit. I've got my stick I'm going to test on here. Just a plain white stick that I used Zinsser's white primer. I've got my bucket with borax. It's 4 gallons of water. It's been heated up to 78 degrees with my heater. It's 1.5 tablespoons per gallon, so I've got 6 tablespoons of borax in here. What I'm going to do is just pour the paints and dip. Key is to keep the paint as close as you can to the surface before it pours. That way it doesn't fall through the water. Here's my yellow. A little red. And some blue. You can see when I first poured in, it does drip just a bit into the water. Just a little bit more blue here. Got my stick to mix it around. I was using straws to help mix the mineral spirits. So we've got some pretty cool swirling there. I'll get my stick and slowly dip it in here. Get my straw and break this around. There you go. That's actually pretty cool. Got a much larger pattern than what I've done previously. We'll let this dry. We'll see what this looks like in a couple hours. What's cool, after you mix the paints together and you do your first dip and then you swirl everything around, pull it out, all the paint ends up floating back to the surface, and there's a time that you should go back and dip something else. So this hasn't glossed over yet, so I've got another stick. You can just go in and dip again on this really crazy mix. Let's shake this off again. And here now you got a real crazy pattern on this. You know, I've got the white base, and with the mixed up paints, it's just a crazy swirl. It's just really wild looking. So once the colors get all mixed up and they float back to the top, if you dip something else, you get this wild pattern. So we'll let this one dry as well. Come back and look at it in a couple hours. So I wanted to show you what skinning over or hardening up is. After a while, your paint will begin to really tighten up, harden up. That's what you get. You get this big mess of clump that sits on top of the water. So you can reuse your bucket of borax a couple of times. Well, this is my probably 3rd or 4th test with different paints, different thicknesses. But that's kind of the hardening over. You can see it just becomes one big lumpy mass. I'll go back here a couple times and scrape up the rest. Now here we are about an hour later. It's still tacky to the touch. This piece you can see is starting to dry along the edge, but where the thicker blue is, it's still pretty wet. You You can see on the back side here, it's still pretty wet as well. Probably gotta let this sit for about 4 hours or longer. Alright, so it's about 4 hours later here. Still a little tacky. Definitely want to let this dry overnight. Coloring is actually pretty cool on this now that it's dried. Not a whole lot of bubbles. The back side you can see there's a little bit more mixing going on. But pretty cool. These Rust-Oleum paints aren't bad. I still think they probably needed to be thinned a little bit better. You know, if I was going to be dumping this in, may play around with it a little bit more. But overall, I'd say Rust-Oleum works okay. I think I might like it a little bit better than the testers. I think also pouring it closer to the water and using kind of the bigger splotches to get more of the waves, that's kind of more the traditional look of swirling. So I know you got to pour in bigger sections and kind of then swirl together. That's where you're going to get these waves. This is actually just interesting. You know, if you want to do something crazy after it all comes back to the top once more, you know, dip something else, you can.